Hello, everyone. As Wally has said, my name is Joe Doran. I'm a professor in the global school. I do a lot of project work in sub-Saharan Africa, but as is relevant to the topic at hand, I also oversee the project center in the United Arab Emirates. So it's a pleasure to get to lead us through some of these different aspects of the event that we have today. I wanted to, before I introduce the panelists and we get going, I'd like to just cover sort of a few things. One is really about, the topic of this event is around Middle Eastern futures. Well, what in the world does that mean, and how did we kind of arrive at that? Wally introduced a number of perspectives and why this seems to be a pretty good framework for at least for WPI, its approach, and then also within the region. But when we were, several months ago, when we were thinking about how we might establish this event, again, thinking about, with all of this different project work that we do, with all of the problems and opportunities that exist in the region, I think what's palpable in a way that isn't in other regions of the world is, and what might be a blind spot to many people in the West, in both Europe and North America, is that the future is being created in the Middle East right now, and it's a future that is uniquely Middle Eastern. It's not replication of what we've done here in North America. It's not replication of what's happening in China. And through that expansive project of creating a future, a vision for Saudi, it's a vision of 2030. For the UAE, it's of 2071. That is the ongoing project within the Middle East, and seemed like a pretty good framework for today's dialogue. On a personal note, I think it was reflected from when I first started becoming engaged in the region, traveling to the UAE in 2012, and that the office that I was working out of and the place that I was living in Dubai didn't exist. The entire section of the city did not exist only 1 to 2 years prior to my arrival. I would go out for runs into sections of the city that were man-made islands into the Gulf. And so watching this future being created and unfold in front of me, and hearing this talk and planning of outposts on Mars, the creation of a UAE space agency, some of those same projects happening in other places throughout the region, really seemed like this moment, this moment in this theme was appropriate for the region. And then another reason that I think that it's an appropriate topic for us to kind of engage in, at this particular moment, has to do with an Arabic proverb that my wife says, which is that the wind blows against the desires of the boat. Right now, we're experiencing, we're in the midst of this global pandemic. Up until now, and particularly across the region, there have been lots of plans made. And the winds have been blowing against the desires of this particular boat. And it is interesting, and it's to hear from our panelists as well about how these visions of the future are adapting and changing against these winds. So with that said, I'd like to just quickly introduce our panelists. We have, as Wally already said, Majid Zambaraji, WPI alum from 1990, serial entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Time Express Parcels. We have Abhilasha Singh, VP for Academic Affairs at the American University of the Emirates. We have Naif Al-Sudairi, who's a WPI alum from '01. He's vice president of Al Saif, an engineering contracting company in Saudi Arabia. We have Asaf Adman, who is a longtime friend of WPI projects and part of a long track record of doing project work with us. He's the head of ILOT, as well as the ILOT Environmental Municipal Unit. And then we have Isa Baron, who is a WPI professor of engineering, founder of the Israeli Project Center, and someone that luckily have been benefiting of many good conversations and sharing of ideas in recent weeks. So with that said, I will turn this over to Majed and let you take it from here.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the introduction. I hope everybody can hear me. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So a quick introduction. My name is Majed Zambaraji. I graduated from WPI in 1990. In the essence of time, I'm just going to jump into the small topic that I would like to talk to you about today, which is building a business in the Middle East.
Majed, sorry. Yep, there you go.
Sorry, now I think that's much better. Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction, Joe. I'll do it again. Thanks for the introduction, Joe. Lovely to be on the call. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about building a business in the Middle East. My name is Majed Zambaraji. I graduated from WPI in 1990. Feels like yesterday, but time flies by very, very quickly. So with that said, I'm just going to give you a quick brief about my experience, what I've done, and what we've gotten to in terms of the Middle East. I live in Dubai.
Oops, you're muted.
I'm getting muted automatically. I don't know why, but okay. Can you guys hear me now? Okay, cool. Can we move on to the next slide, because I can't control the deck from my side. Great, excellent. So I'll just call the slides as we go forward. So great to be here. What does it take to be an entrepreneur? Just 2 slides back here. Yeah, perfect, wonderful. So in essence, when you graduate from college, what you really do is you have this accumulation of knowledge which you are building every day. You actually don't really recognize it, but you essentially operate a bit like a soaking machine, which is just taking information in. And this accumulation of academic and various job roles that you do in your life creates something which is your know-how. And later on, as you evolve, you realize that your edge against everybody else is this know-how that you have, and that what makes you really different from everybody else. So what is an entrepreneur for me, and at least in the way I've evolved in my career, is really your ability to monetize on this education and the various experiences that you've done to become who you are, or to make yourself, stand up in an organization, in a corporate culture, or in the entrepreneurial world. So essentially what it boils down to is really your intellect, your belief in yourself, the knowledge that you've built through academic and various experiences in organizations. Next slide. So there is always this big topic in terms of why do entrepreneurs fail? And you hear these massive statistics of 90% of all of the entrepreneurs, if not more, actually don't end up making it. And despite the fact that it is quite difficult, but to a large extent, you prepare yourself as you get into this journey. And of course, it's a very dynamic journey. And this is a few thoughts that I've put together in terms of, from my experience, what are some of the critical criteria that graduating and getting into the workspace and later on evolving, what becomes very important for you to have in terms of skill sets. Some of these are actually easier than others. Some of them are embedded into your own DNA as a person. Others are things whether you're willing to do them or not. Knowledge is not something you can buy. It's something you gain. You get it from experience. Your ability to execute is really related to your attitude and your granularity in what you do. The elements of adaptation, again, these are personality aspects that you either want to adapt or don't want to adapt. But in a very fast-moving entrepreneurial environment, you have to adapt. It's not a question of whether you want to or not. Innovation is another one that I feel very, very strongly about, because we very much live and thrive on innovation, because if you don't do things differently, then you cannot survive in an entrepreneurial world. And most importantly is your ability to sell, because in a small enterprise, you are the face of the organization, you are the one who's driving it forward, and you are the one who's actually making a difference in terms of customer impact, customer acquisition, customer maintenance. So we get into the farmer and hunter type of equation. I won't spend too much time on this slide. I could spend half an hour on it. It's something that I'm very passionate about, but feel free to ask me any questions later on. I'm more than happy to dig more into it. On the next slide, a little bit about myself. So when I graduated from WPI, I worked for GE, General Electric, and I had 11 years with GE. I won't tell you how I got the interview, because I joined GE on a Friday and I started with them on a Monday. So this is how quickly I joined them. And I was asked to actually go for my interview within half an hour. They called me at home and they said, could you come to Hammersmith in half an hour? I did my interview on a Friday at 5 o'clock in London, and I started work on the following Monday with GE, and I stayed with them for 11 years. And I worked with them with many, many businesses in aircraft engines, capital aviation out of Ireland, Wales. I did Barcelona for 4 years with GE Power. I did GE Insurance Group out of London. I did medical systems out of Paris. So I was in many, many different areas. And then I came to the Middle East in 2006. I was a CEO for a company called Agility Logistics. And then from there on, I kept evolving. I was also with UPS, managing the region, Middle East, India, Central Asia, Africa. And 5 years ago, I set up my own company. We pretty much focused on digitizing the courier industry. We have 380 people. We founded in 2016. We have 2 marketplaces that drive a lot of our business, around 20,000 customers. We've been growing at a very healthy rate, I would say, probably a normal rate, around 20% a month. And the key attributes that has made us what we are is really the element of innovation to start with, is continuously to reinvent what we're currently doing, selling on knowledge and know-how, hiring people that are really, really capable around us, at least for what we can afford, and aiming to be number one in what we're doing. Our philosophy is always to approach things in trying to find a solution for problems, continue to invest in technology, make sure we used to have a ratio at GE called say-do ratio. So whatever we promise our customers, we make sure we do it, and always anticipate for the worst. I think these are the small take.
Oops, we lost you there for a second.
Okay, I don't know where you lost me, but hopefully I got through the last sentence on my slide. Did you guys hear the last piece about anticipating the worst?
A bit of it.
Okay, so this is the summary. Again, I mean, we have our challenges. Definitely, it's not an easy journey. It's a very exciting journey. But feel free to ask me any questions. I'd be happy to tell you more.
Great, thanks, Majed.
Over to you, Joe.
Great, thanks, Majed. And so then up next we have Abhilasha Singh.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you for giving this wonderful opportunity and inviting me to the WPI's Global School Virtual Event Series, interestingly focused on the future of Middle East. While I have traveled across the region and was working earlier in Saudi Arabia in Jeddah, but now for more than a decade, I'm in UAE and working in the higher ed sector. So with these words, I will focus more on UAE, but if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer that after the presentation. Can we go to the next slide? So already, I can see that Provost Uae has set the stage, and I'm sure that all of you, I was hearing from Joe, Majid also set the stage very well with entrepreneurship presentation, but I know all of you are familiar with UAE as a country. Perhaps you have heard about the skyscrapers, you have heard about the oil wealth. You may not be familiar with the very details of the country, but yes, as the images were shown earlier in the presentation, you can see that how from a very small backwater desert nation of hardly less than 300,000 people in 1971, and as Joe said that, you know, he was probably at a place which was not existing a couple of years back. So the entire nation, it turned into a very rich, vibrant economic center of more than 9 million today. So this abbreviation UAE is interesting. And when I came here from Saudi Arabia, for the first time, I noticed that this Emirates, basically, it comes from Amir, from the term Amir. And specifically, it references to the principalities that are ruled by a dynastic Islamic monarch. So there are 7 Emirates here. Each one of them, they are having, they are unique in nature, Abu Dhabi being the capital. And interestingly, most of the UAE's current residents, including me, are foreign born. So alongside other oil-rich Persian Gulf monarchies like Qatar, Kuwait, UAE is also one of a few countries in the world where the migrant workers outnumber the native-born population. So it is the second largest economy in the Arab world, right after Saudi Arabia, of course. And you will be surprised to know that only 1/3 of the GDP is from oil revenue. So UAE actually has the most diversified economy in the Arab world, and definitely it gives the best opportunity for people to, especially in Dubai, it's a favorable place to set business. And I'm sure, like Majid said, that Dubai is the best place you can set your business, and it is known as one of the gateway for entering the Europe, Middle East, and African markets. So it has untapped potential to double its export in the African countries as well. One thing which is important for UAE, which I have noticed in the past 12, 13 years in the region, it always prioritizes the education, culture, and that's why monetization drive started long back, health and family. And end of 2018, if I'm not wrong, the country published the Centennial 2071 vision. Can we go to the next slide, please? So if you look at the 2071 vision, there are 4 pillars of the Uae Centennial 2071 vision. As you can see, forward-looking government, future-oriented education, diversified and knowledge-based economy, and more cohesive society. So again, I will rather focus more on something which is future-oriented education. That's my background coming from the higher ed industry. I would like to focus more on that. So in 2016, there were a lot of reshuffle in the ministry, especially in Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. It was called Moheser earlier, and then it was merged into Ministry of Education with 2 ministers of state in support. So there were a lot of reshuffling in the ministry, merging between ministries and government institutions. There were 3 public universities, they were merged, and there were formation of new councils and new boards. So UAE Council of Scientists was formed, including like some leading researcher and academicians here. So the UAE Centennial 2071 program aims in this access education to make the country's entire educational system the best in the world, and pushing forward the country's like cultural and economic growth so that they can enable the people to dedicate their talents and their abilities to serve the country. So the educational system here is mandated, like any other country, to focus more on the skills needed for 22nd century in the minds of students from an early stage with positive Emirati values. So the aim is more to have UAE universities to be among the best universities in the world. So that's the aim. Can we go to the next slide? So I know that it is not visible, but you can find this, the source is there. It's a UAE annual book where you can see that the focus is always on future oriented, a very sustainable, like lifelong learning, continuous and sustainable education. So it talks about education system, the future curricula, the ethical values and positivity, open to world's experiences. And when we say like open to world's experiences, specialized, the best in the world, reinforcing national ethics and values, continuous learning, lifelong learning. So definitely it gives, we can see that the focus is more and more on excellent and diversified system of higher education. And as the provost has mentioned earlier, it gives ample opportunity to collaborate with different parts of the world, with the higher education institutions, HEIs and HEPs in different parts of the world. So for an excellent and diversified system of higher education, we as an institution, American University in the Emirates, we also aligned with the Ministry of Education, MOE's vision to adopt the best and the latest educational methods which are there, and to ensure that education is available to everyone. And it is more student-centric. So if you come to this part of the world, you will find that the education is more student-centric, which is focusing more and more on students' strength and interest and using the best advanced science and technology. So we have noticed like there has been a complete transformation of higher education. Can we go to the next slide? And this is basically the last slide, just to give you a brief that in the past few decades, the entire educational institutions, especially here in the region, and probably I can mention even government all across the world, we have questioned the authentication of online degrees. Here also, it was not perceived as like very authentic degree, let me put this way. So, I mean, not only the ministry, because as we were not supposed to hire anyone who is having online degree. So this ministry was making it sure about it that, not to hire anyone with online degrees, but things are changing now. So in the past, there were certain questions raised in the authentication of the online degrees, online program, but in the global educational landscape, we all are aware what happened. So over the past few months, significant changes took place in the university operation, and this was due to the sudden and rapid shift towards remote and online education. And we can see all the educational institutions they were mandated to have like remote teaching and learning for a reason, because we wanted to maintain the continuity of learning. And like any other colleges and universities in the world, we were also under pressure. And while transitioning to the emergency remote teaching and learning, with the government support, we ensured very meaningful and quality learning experiences. So the entire transformation of higher education was possible through UAE's adoption of international standards and indicators in assessing the performance and competitiveness of the local and federal government institutions, which also helped in improving the performance, promoting the country's global competitiveness, and achieving the UAE's Centennial 2071 vision with the 4 pillars which were there, especially the education. So many of the e-learning platforms have been developed recently, including like in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure NIFE is there. The National Education Portal, like AIN, it become the main channel of education for more than 6 million users. And this platform, only in Saudi Arabia, it provided like 30,000 devices for those who were economically weak during this pandemic. In Tunisia, Morocco, Bahrain, also there were free access provided to the online educational platform. So a number of distance learning platform in the Middle East came up, like EduNet in Bahrain, e-learning in Kuwait, MOE in Oman, similarly in Qatar, Ministry of Education channel, KSA, Saudi Arabia, I mentioned, Alif Education and EduShare in UAE as well. This all were there, this platform, it came during the lockdown. We noticed that these platforms were very helpful, and the institutions were implementing those. So last March 2019, UAE also aligned its national strategy on both innovation and artificial intelligence, which was like first of its kind in the region, maybe in the world. And Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, who is the Prime Minister of the UAE, he announced that a new generation of schools will be built in the UAE, which will include the labs for machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we know that in UAE, especially, there are regulatory authorities in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, and in Qatar, as well as in Kuwait. So our regulatory authority here is Commission for Academic Accreditation. And in Abu Dhabi, it is Department of Education and Knowledge, which was earlier known as EDIC, Abu Dhabi Educational Council. They closely monitor basically all the programs in the country and how the programs are assessed. So we are not supposed to even offer any program being accredited by the Ministry of Education, by the Commission for Academic Accreditation. We cannot offer any program unless it is there is a feasibility study, there is a market research, and it's fully accredited by the Ministry of Education, the Commission for Academic Accreditation. So any delivery, even through distance learning platforms, are governed and approved by the government authorities. And we are noticing that different standards of QA, quality assurance, and institutional effectiveness are in place now to monitor them. So during this pandemic, we were also asked to develop a policy on distance learning. So we developed the policy and its implementation, and to nominate someone who will be a distance learning coordinator. So those changes, it took place. I mean, with this, I concur with Provost Wale that there are ample opportunities to collaborate on global issues and challenges, common research interest with the faculty members of different institutions, especially with WPI. And we look forward to a long-term and mutually beneficial partnership, which is already in process. Thank you. Any question, please feel free to ask. Over to Joe.
Great, thanks, Abhilasha. We'll definitely have folks listening write your questions in, and we'll get to them during the discussion section after everyone is presented. But I will definitely be taking all questions and make sure that I ask them. Up next is Naif. Naif.
Yes, hi. My name is Naif Al-Sudairi. I'm a graduate of WPI in 2001, Industrial Engineering. And I also have an MBA in Finance. I've worked in HSBC for 14 years between debt capital market, project finance, and corporate banking. I also was the CEO of Volkswagen Saudi Arabia for 3 years. And then I moved to Al-Saif Investments, and Al-Saif Investments have different investments in construction, as well as hospitals, as well as operation maintenance, and logistics, and some other small businesses, diversified businesses in the company. My role in Al-Saif is to put in a vision that summarizes or position Al-Saif to thrive with the Vision 2030 that is set by the government. We are working on the PPP segment. We're putting a lot of work in the privatization with the country. So the role of the country has moved from a proactive country to sustain their economy as well as their social and urban aspects of life. So Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, has the general direction of the policies and the goals and the objectives of the country to position the country into a partner and not only a vendor. Saudi is considered a vendor all of these previous years. The country wants to change that idea. And to summarize the strategy of 2030, they put 3 pillars of that strategy due to the heart of Saudi being, the holy custodian of the 2 holy mosques. So they are concentrating on being the heart of the Arab and the Muslim world, and to cater for that segment, as well as becoming the investment powerhouse. As we know, the Saudi pension fund has about $160 billion, and they want to take that to $1.9 trillion in the year 2030. And then the 3rd pillar would be the hub that connects 3 continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. And that positions the country to do business and to support logistics for all companies around the world. To explain more about the strategy, there are three major themes of the country. There is a vibrant society, which is one of the themes, and there are objectives to raise the Saudi position in the social capital index from 26 to 10. There are 3 cities that they want to be in the top 100 cities worldwide. There is the increase of the household spending and the entertainment inside Saudi. There's an increase in the capacity to welcome visitors. The country is opening up from 8 million to 30 million, and they hope to reach 100 million by 2030. And then there is the second theme, which is the thriving economy. The country wants to move away from oil exports by raising the share of non-GDP from 16 to 50%, to raise our global ranking in logistic and performance index, as well to increase the private sector contribution from 40 to 65 in the GDP, to increase the foreign direct investment to the country, to increase the public investment fund assets, to increase the women participation in the workforce from 22 to 30, as we all heard that the country is opening up for the women by driving, by thriving, by giving them tools to do SME businesses. Also the country is focusing on the SME segment by they want to contribute to the GDP from 20 to 35. And the major challenge of the country is, unemployment. As we know, Saudi is about 35 million in population. 29% is under the age of 30. So it's a big challenge for the country. And they want to lower the rate of unemployment from 12% to 7%. And then the third theme is an ambitious nation. They want to raise the non-profitable sector in the GDP from 1 to 5%. They want to increase the household saving from 6 to 10%. They want to raise the ranking of the e-government, and they've done a tremendous job in the e-government in the past 2 years. They want to raise it from 36 to be among the top 5 in the world. And they want to raise our ranking in the government effectiveness index from 80 to 20%. So the objectives are quite stretched, but I think they're doing a great job so far. That's pretty much, I wanted to make it as fast, as simple as possible.
That's great. Thanks, Naif. And again, I just want to repeat, if anyone is having any, if any questions come up from the audience, please feel free to post them and we'll get to them in the discussion afterwards. Thanks. Okay, next up, we're headed to Israel with Asaf.
So, hi everyone. My name is Asaf Admon. I'm the head of the environmental unit of Eilat and Eilat region. Eilat is a small touristic city located in the south of Israel, on the top of the Red Sea. We are neighbors of Aqaba in Jordan and Taba in Egypt, and we also share a maritime border with Saudi Arabia. So it's definitely quite the center of the Middle East, and Eilat is, as I said, a small touristic city. We have 65,000 residents. Most of them are working in the tourism industry, and we are trying to promote Eilat as a smart city and a good city for its citizens and guests. The next slide, please. Okay, something went wrong with the slide, but I think it will be okay. So our vision is to be energy independent by renewable sources, 100% independent. And at the moment, we are producing 70% of our daily consumption from the sun. How are we doing that? It's we had a strategic plan, and we implemented renewable energy and solar systems, fields and on roofs. And we have ongoing projects of energy efficiency. And we are trying to introduce innovation and collaboration, international collaboration. So as I said, at the moment, 70% of our daily energy is, electricity is coming from the sun. And I will talk in my next slide about the international cooperation. And so we have installed already 200 megawatt of solar systems. And we collaborate with universities in order to learn and increase our knowledge, and all the time be in a learning procedure. So we collaborate with WPI and with other universities from Israel and from around the world. We have developed a system, a smart platform for promoting solar installations on roofs, private or non-private. And I think this can be interesting for any municipality or any company who wants to promote this. It's a one-stop shop to put up a solar system on the roof. Next slide. So as for our international collaboration, our major method in order to promote all the things I was talking about is fundraising and international cooperation. So at the moment, we have 6 European Commission projects funded by the European Commission with many partners around Europe. And we are very proud of this. And it's with a total of more than 3 million euros invested in Eilat and in innovation. So next slide. So this is really in a nutshell about our smart city projects and strategy. But I can't talk about Eilat without talking about the Red Sea and how important it is for us to take care of it. So we are, not many people know that the coral reef in the Red Sea, also in Eilat in Israel, and also in Aqaba in Jordan, and in Taba in Egypt, and also in Saudi Arabia, is predicted by the scientists to be the last coral reef to survive water warming due to climate change. And this has a long scientific explanation, which I won't get into it now, but we understand the responsibility we have to take care of this, and we are doing all sorts of things in order to make sure we are taking care of our sea. We also try and want to collaborate with our neighbors in this topic. And one of the things we are very proud of, we have just recently, in the end of 2020, had approved local law that is banning single-use plastics and dishes and nylon bags in the beaches in Eilat. And that is, I think, is a very important thing in order to do that. So that's it for now, very shortly.
Thanks, Asif. Isa. Oh, Isa, you're muted.
No, I'm not.
There you are.
Hello, I'm Isa Baron, and I'm the founder and director of the Israel Project Center. And we are located the Project Center for most of our activities is located half an hour north of Eilat, basically in the middle of nowhere. If you remember the map that Asaf put up, we're in the middle of nowhere. And you can see in the middle of nowhere, on the right-hand side, that's Kibbutz Keturah, where we are. And in the background, you see the Jordanian mountains. Actually, in all the pictures, when you see something pretty, I mean, some of the pretty aspects are the mountains of Jordan. And so, especially in the evenings. So, so why there? Two reasons, three reasons really. One is that this environment for students that come from the United States, where they're used to everything always being available, being in the desert for an extended period of time and seeing how people live and work there is a very eye-opening experience in terms of how do you function when not everything is available all the time, when you really have to consider which water to use, if you can, when Amazon doesn't deliver, and all kinds of things like that. It's eye-opening for them. So that's one advantage. The other advantage is, of course, the city of Eilat and Asaf's commitment, of Asaf's unit's commitment to environmental stewardship, which is something that WPI is also very committed to. And so we kind of speak the same language and we can work on similar projects. And the third component is that we're working with the Arava Institute. And the Arava Institute is at Keturah. It's an environmental science program and academic program affiliated with Ben-Gurion University and with Bennington College. We are working there part-time, and then we're doing because our projects are they don't fully fit into their program, so we kind of we have figured out how to work together productively, and they're helping us making it a richer experience for our students. The interesting thing also is the Arava Institute, again, just as Asaf, are very committed to sustainability, but they're also committed to building transboundary communities. So they have programs where they are reaching out to the neighbors. They have students from the neighboring countries, and they are working very hard to create dialogue between these people that are not used to talking to each other around a shared responsibility for the environment in which we are living. And the environment in the Arava region is very, very sensitive, and thus concerted efforts on sustainability are really important. And so our students get to do really cool projects. We have worked on solar cells. We have done 2 solar cell projects. This is the solar field, I think, at on the top left at Keturah. And we also do projects in agricultural technology. And so the team that you see on the bottom, this team was there a year ago before COVID hit. And they spent time fixing and updating some equipment that was being used for research. But it opened their eyes to the possibility of using their technology background to working in areas that they would never have considered. And also, it made them much more sensitive to what is required to grow things in the desert. So we have energy, we have environment, we have agriculture, and then we have been doing several projects with Asaf on helping them with their smart city initiatives in Eilat. And that's very exciting for us because on the one hand, it's not a very big city, but they have a lot of tourists. On the other hand, it's something where the students can really make a difference. And so we have all these different components that come together to making it a really interesting project center. And we are hoping that we can build on that to reach out or cooperate or learn or compare or creating a community of learners that is larger than this group in Eilat.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Isa. All right, so I'd like to open this up now to kind of discuss a few things. I mean, I was jotting down a number of notes and things. What was striking me actually is that the consistency of sort of the number of common themes that were emerging across everyone's ongoing work and everyone's talk. And the place that I'd like to start actually, and it goes into a lot of directions, and please feel free to jump in with comments and things, is that it's around the issues of innovation and entrepreneurship. And so thinking about, there are, in the case of the UAE, it's this Vision 2030, Vision 2071. For Saudi, it's 2030. Innovation and entrepreneurship is baked into the way that Israelis you're going about business, as we talked about in some of our other discussions. What do you think are some of the successful policies, programs that have been implemented in your countries, or maybe it's even just cultural or types of support systems that have built in to kind of foster the spirit of innovation in entrepreneurship? Because as you've laid out, there are goals of increased employment opportunities. It's creating new technologies to solve environmental problems. So what are some of the things that are being done in your estimation that are helping to foster this environment of exploration for innovation and entrepreneurship?
Can I mention a few things here?
Please.
Okay, so for any higher education institution, the challenge always remains on building the employability. And when we look at employability, one has to focus where is the emphasis? It is on employing the students or enhancing their ability. So one thing which I really liked here, that the Ministry of Education, they mandated a course of innovation. They said innovation as a course, it has to be mandated for all undergraduate students. So across the federal institution, private institution, innovation as a course needs to be taught. Now the question comes about empowering. Who is going to teach innovation? Innovation is not easy to teach. Probably, if I'm the vice president for academic affairs, for next time I will call Majid to teach that course, because it's so related, innovation and entrepreneurship. And that was a challenge when it was mandated by the ministry. So the support system, what MOE did, basically, they collaborated with Stanford University, and they asked the higher education institutions to nominate 2 people from each institution. And then there was a proper training of those faculty members in the country. And then many of them were nominated by the institution to go to Stanford and and complete the course. So that is what I feel, that the strategy of innovation and AI, then recently it has been merged, but otherwise it was innovation strategy. And they started with the educational institution, they collaborated with the Stanford University. The capacity building exercise was done completely. so that the students can become the course is delivered for the students to become more agile, more like agility and resilience. These are the two major things I think, like we all are focusing on lifelong learners, resilience, agility. So that part it is started by the vision of the country, and then gradually through this process it was developed.
Joseph, if you allow me, part of the vision is for Saudi Arabia, they are creating a number of cities. Some of these cities are constructed around innovation, and that city is called NEOM, and the whole city is about 170 kilometers on the Red Sea, and the city is all powered with renewable energy, and they want to have factories of robotics and also similar to the Silicon Valley in the US. They want to promote tech companies, and they've created free zones, and they've created funds and loans to support businesses in that region. So Saudi has a whole objective of innovation. There's a whole chapters and goals around that, discussion that you just mentioned. But NEOM is going to tackle all of the innovation within the country. And there is another city which is called Qiddiya, and Qiddiya is also an entertainment city that has also innovation into it, embedded into the vision.
So it's part of the plan is to, almost like a company might create a separate innovation unit outside of its current sort of structure and systems, and then incorporate it back in. In many ways, these cities are allowing for the creation of sort of specific environments oriented towards I&E that could then be later brought into, lessons learned, things like that, brought in and shared more broadly. Is that sort of the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, innovation in general, it's tackled in the vision. If you look at the agriculture part, they're into the hydroponics, innovative ways to preserve the water in the country and in the environment. If you look at NEOM, it tackles more about the international requirements of solar panels, manufacturing of solar panels. The whole city is going to be run in a non-oil goal. The whole city will be, the public transportation will be electric. You've seen the wind panels for the first time. The manufacturing of the wind panels in that city, and the whole city is going to attract companies, worldwide companies who want to have economic sense to deliver their innovative and environmental friendly products to Europe in a cheaper methodology. We've seen a lot of the Chinese coming to the city, to hide away from the tariffs, but and they see all of these financial powerhouse support and innovative ways to start that city. So it is a city that is marketed and supported by the government because they want to deliver something to the world by becoming environmental friendly and innovative as much as they can.
Majed, as an entrepreneur yourself, operating in this environment, also with insight, having lived and worked in the United States, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? Did we lose Majed? I think we might have lost him, but that's all right. And actually, so it kind of brings me in hearing about this and.
Sorry, Joe. I'm
Oh,
trying-
you're here. Okay. Yep. There you are. Go ahead, Majed. That's all right. I think there's a problem with the connection. So with regard to INE, I mean, one of the things that was brought up both in what Naif said as well as Abalasha, and I think it's relevant to the work that you're doing in Israel to talk about the Israeli startup scene. I mean, that's something that has been long in development, and it's a thriving incubator of important startups and various new technologies, and it just brings to light, I think, some of those issues around creating the context for entrepreneurship, innovation, but also for solving some of these environmental challenges. I know, Isa, that some of the project work that students have been doing have been with Israeli startups and things to that nature. Is there anything you have to say, in that regard?
So yeah, here is innovation and entrepreneurship are almost endemic, and so it's there's a lot. I mean, anybody that studies this, there are discussions. What is it? Is it government programs, or is it the culture, or is it the context, or is it people that grow up being questioning authority from age 0? And the answer is probably all of the above. The fact is, and the fact that Israelis can't follow any rules, and so they have to do it differently. But that I don't think that's narrow. That might be Middle Eastern. That might not only be Israeli. And so there are. In the end, it's people. In the end, it is people that are willing to work, are willing to invest, are willing to, and the resources to do it. And so I think it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of drive. And for our students, they get to work in this environment and they participate, and it's very exciting for them. So they bring their basic education, but then in terms of training them, projects are probably the best way to do it, right? Because they actually do. They don't listen to a course, they don't do a seminar, they don't have to read or write, they're just doing it. They're taking what they have learned, they're given an assignment. By the end of the week, they have to present something and it gets pulled apart, and then they have to sit down and fix it, or and so on and so on. And so they learn by doing.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to look into the chat here, and actually this, I think, is a starting point with Isa and Asaf, but also Abalash, Naif, and others, is that Professor Hal Walker has written that a number of faculty and students at WPI are interested in water, and he'd be interested in hearing from the panelists about your thoughts on some of the ways in which that WPI might be able to work with folks across the region on these issues. In fact, we're going to hear from a student team from that was at American University of Sharjah last year and completed a work with SIWA, the Sharjah Energy and Water Authority.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have been focusing on and have interest in, and we're just curious to hear some of the thoughts from all of you on the ways in which WPI might be able to be involved.
See, I mean, unfortunately, as an institution, we are not into that research. But I can actually guide and give some suggestion. So I think in UAEU, which is in Al Ain, it's a public institution, public university, United Arab Emirates University. They are, if I'm not wrong, they are into water. So feel free to write to me. I can connect you to someone there. They do a lot of research in water. I think there was a national water center. There was a plan to develop that. Another institute which was which was very much into researchers into water conservation and other issues related to water was Masdar. Now Masdar has been merged with like Masdar, Petroleum, and Khalifa University. These were the three different public universities. Now they have been merged into one, and it's Khalifa University. So if you can get in touch with someone in Khalifa University, again, it's a public university, and they are also into a lot of researches related to water. So I mean, I can just give you this information that try to get in touch with someone in Khalifa University and UAEU, which is United Arab Emirates University. And if you're not able to do so, please, through Joseph or through anyone, through Rachel, just write to me. I will try to connect you with someone. That's what I can do.
Great. Other thoughts?
I would love to add, first of all, it's a good question because this is something I wanted to say and forgot. Eilat is reusing 100% of the wastewater, high quality treated for agriculture, mostly for dates. And this project was set maybe 20 years ago and is very, very successful. And it's something we are always open for people to come and learn. And also, we have, I think Israel is quite known for its water technology and agriculture with very low amounts of water. And definitely, we're happy to share. And also, I think students can be ambassadors from this point and can come and learn and take it to other places. Of course, there's a long way to go still, but that's one point. The second thing, I think, in the whole of the Middle East, we are moving from maybe our old culture to new cities, and this change is also has a lot of a high price of water consumption. And I think we should try and target this by technology and try and still aim to the same quality of life, but by using less water. I think this is something we can do, and definitely Academy is a good partner to do this.
Isa, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could plan on having projects that work in more than one location in the Middle East on similar issues, and kind of get a larger understanding of what the situation is, or what the problems are, what the approaches are. It depends. It would take some sitting down with people who are interested in defining these things. And it depends, of course, on interest of the people that are in the different project centers. But I think this is something where we could maybe, create some common interest and some more excitement around bigger impact.
Yeah, water seems to be one of those topics too, right? That transcends boundaries and in the region. It's a common problem across political boundaries.
Right.
Knife, do you have any thoughts on that?
Water was one of the first topics for the transboundary work. in the area. And so there are people that claim that the peace accords with Jordan came about from joint work on water problems. So in general, sorry.
Oh. While Isa grabs a glass of water, Knife, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, water is a big challenge in the Middle East, especially in the GCC. Saudi has been pioneers on the water desalination and using the seawater for agriculture requirements. But I think, like the panelists have mentioned, we need a lot of education around it and educating the people not to waste water, and new ways to use the water in a much beneficial to the environment as possible. But yeah, there is a huge gap that WPI could do with their partners in the GCC to find innovative ways to minimize the usage of water.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much to Hal Walker for bringing that up. So there's another question here from Karen Bean, and Knife, you answered part of it in there, but I just wanted to give an opportunity for you to speak to it, maybe extend it to Abhilasha and others. Is that what are your thoughts on how education will need to adjust to accommodate future workforce needs? And Karen's specifically asking in the context of Saudi, but this applies across the region as these economies are transformed and trying to foster this environment of innovation and entrepreneurship. So what are your thoughts, Knife?
Yeah, I think previously education concentrated on engineers, finance people in Saudi. I think with the Vision 2030, there's a lot of uncatered education channels that has been neglected over the years. And in the Vision 2030, there is a whole chapter of educational programs to fit requirements for the country moving forward. And that is, if it comes to tourism, languages, infrastructure engineers like civil and so on. But I mean, there is a whole chapter that discusses education, and part of it is, gearing up the local and private segment, universities and, high schools to adapt to the requirements within the country. And I think the country is putting a lot of efforts to improve the educational programs within the country. I think a lot of the programs, and you've seen a lot of students coming to the US, going to Europe, sponsored by the government. And this is something that now the government is thinking to not only continue that, but also to have, state-of-the-art universities and professors coming to the country. We've seen one that King Abdullah University in the Red Sea, and it focuses in biology and sea biology, and concentrated on like some of the panelists said, on the reefs. This is something that is required. This is something that is unheard of 10, 15 years in Saudi. People going into the sea life education and the biological life in the Red Sea. We always see that in the West, but I think the country is adapting to the requirements of the environment and the requirement, adapting to the requirement in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's interesting. Abhilasha? Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry, this is a buzzword these days. You are muted. You are muted. I agree with what Knife has mentioned. Actually, in the region, there are universities, and I just gave the name of like Khalifa University and UAU. They are the leading universities in UAE, especially. Just to give you a brief, like even if we see only Dubai is is becoming a regional educational hub. There are more than 77 or 80 universities only in Dubai. And there are lots of initiatives the government is taking, like giving them gold visa. If the students are outstanding students, they give them gold visa. If their CGPA is about 3.8, they give them 5 years visa. The students can even, there was a recent regulation that the students can even sponsor their families, provided they can afford it. If I have to give you the percentage of the overall literacy rate of UAE, I think it is above 90%. So, which is also very good. And especially being women, the country is breaking all stereotypes, basically. The literacy rate of women in UAE is above 95%. Emirati women are more enrolling in the higher education. That has also been noticed. I mean, I'm personally noticing that a lot. And the focus is more on STEM education. Now, the country was not earlier focusing on STEM education. And it was just 2-3 weeks back, I was giving a presentation on women and artificial intelligence. And while making this presentation, I started doing a lot of research, and I found that women are way behind when it comes to artificial intelligence. And maybe because engineering and science and maths and these subjects are more dominated by men. I mean, if you see the dropout rate is quite high. I mean, the same figures are there in US as well. So, but I can see now that although only 46% of the university graduates are into STEM education, but the country is now like focusing more and more on STEM education. So besides providing a very sustainable, like lifelong learning, they believe, and very sustainable and continuous education, there is a budget of more than 10 billion which is given to the higher education, which is dedicated for the higher education system. And the focus is, again, to make it more compatible with the requirement of the future by having those by inculcating those skills which are required. Looking at the World Economic Forum reports which are coming, what are the future skills required? So we are personally, I'm noticing that a lot in UAE, and of course in the region as well. Whether I have to talk about like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, all the GCC countries, I can see that there is a clear budget which is given to for education. They're focusing a lot on what skills are required for the future, breaking all kind of stereotypes. I mean, I can give you a lot of, like, especially in UAE, having a Ministry of Happiness, Ministry of Tolerance, Ministry of Possibilities, and young women like 22 years old being in the cabinet. It's something which probably the world is noticing. So I'm sure that there is a transformation happening, and more and more innovation and more focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning is being witnessed here.
I want to change gears. Thank you. I want to change gears slightly and go back to some of the themes that came up across all of your talks. And one of them was around tourism. And it was addressed in a number of different ways. We talked about it in terms of potential for economic development. We talked about it in terms of sustainability and the attention that it brings to the environment and protecting the environment and things to those nature, that nature. And so, Asaf, I kind of like to turn it over to you right now to kind of hear some of your thoughts around, the work, your ongoing work in this area, how you all think about it, and et cetera.
So first of all, I have to say that COVID has had a very big impact on tourism in Eilat, I guess, like other tourist cities around the world. And we are really in a real crisis in this point of view. And it's a good opportunity to try and think of things differently. And we had just a month ago, Eilat was defined by the government like a green island for a COVID point of view. And it was allowed to come here only after a COVID test, a negative test, and people could come for holidays. Now we are back to lockdown, so at the moment it's not working, but I hope it will work again after this lockdown. And definitely we are looking at our tourism industry and thinking how we can make it more environmental friendly, and work it up to an ecotourism environment. It's challenging. It's challenging indeed, because it's an industry and its economy behind it, and I think it will be even more challenging in the next coming maybe couple of years until we get out of this. But I think we understand. We, is our leaders, the hotel owners, the public, the children, the schools. We understand we have to make a change. Otherwise, we won't have a bay left. We won't have the coral reef. We won't have open areas. We won't have nature. So I believe we can make this change. It just takes time.
So it's sort of reminiscent of, I do work in Namibia as well. And one of the projects that we were planned to do, it was interrupted due to the pandemic, actually. And part of it was the way that the project was scoped and framed was that tourists ended up not being aware of the local conditions. And so when they would arrive at hotels, they would be the biggest consumers of water, of other types of producers of other types of waste. And so it was a sort of this, they wanted to look at like this intervention and how to make some of those aspects of tourism without losing the economic impact of this double-edged sword of trying to use tourists to that are traveling to appreciate natural beauty and culture and all of those things without further diminishing the and having a harmful impact on the economy. So with that said, actually, Naif, I know that tourism is something that was that you brought up in your own talk. So how does this sort of factor into the plans and to the Saudi context?
Saudi has been closed to foreigners for a while, unless if someone is working in Saudi or doing business in Saudi. But otherwise, it was limited visas was given to whoever applied for it. I mean, Saudi has put the tourism as a focal point of the vision, and I think if you've seen, Saudi have done a tremendous good job. And the UNESCO, now we have 5 UNESCO heritage sites that's been approved, and we've seen a number of the cities that they've announced that focuses on tourism. And we've seen the G20 being hosted in Saudi for the first time in history, as well as we've seen a lot of sporting events, concerts, influencers, Hollywood, actors coming and, videoing some of their experiences in Saudi. So, I mean, Saudi is taking tourism to the next level and adapting to, the competition in the region, knowing that Egypt, has the pyramids, Dubai has the new city, messages, but Saudi has to define itself in a different way. And we've seen Qatar, trying to get the World Cup, and they got it. And now Qatar, everyone speaks of Qatar. No one knew Qatar before that. So Saudi is adapting to the new hype of marketing and getting these events to market for the country. And with the new cities, we've seen Saudi has the islands that we see in the Maldives or in the Bahamas. We've seen Saudi has the mountains that we see in Europe. We've seen we have the deserts. We have we have a lot of things that are not tapped to the rest of the world, and this is what Saudi wants, to have people to come and learn the culture and learn, the uniqueness of the environment and how to make business through tourism. So I think I am very motivated to see people coming and learning about our culture and the beauty of the land.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'm looking at the clock, and I just want to kind of pose this general question to the panel. You know, is there anything that I didn't point to that you brought up in your presentations, or things that came to mind while other people were talking that you really wish that I'd asked, or that I'd introduced into the discussion? Is there anything, in thinking about the topics and themes that we've sort of covered, is there anything here that has come to mind that we should have talked about that we didn't? Well, thank you very much. I think before we close, what I would just like to say is actually to my WPI colleagues that are listening, is that, please reach out if any of this has struck a nerve with you. Part of our goal is to really increase the engagement in the region, developing, projects in the places that we already are, but expanding to address issues together, really, in places that we're not currently operating. And as you can see, everything from focusing on innovation and entrepreneurship, specifically education, water, energy, all of these different things that we've discussed. Just please reach out to me if you have ideas, or for projects and things, or you'd like to make connections with any of the folks here. So,
Joe,
sure,
do you mind a message to my WPI, students?
Please.
I really was, fortunate to go to WPI through the IQP and the MQP programs, because it's one of the few universities that, connects what is, required in the working field versus what is being, discussed in classrooms. And I think this is a transformation for leaders in the future in the engineering, field. And this had added a lot to my experience, and the reason why I've been successful in business is because of these programs that has added a lot to my capabilities. So my message to WPI, please continue with the programs. It's amazing, and I wish all the best for the students.
Great, thanks, Knife. Great, thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the panelists, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. It was lovely talking, and it was good to listen to others as well and to learn different perspective. And please, you can share my contact details to any of your WPI colleagues or anyone who is listening today, and I will be happy to address any questions if I can, to the best of my ability.
Great, thank you.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asaf. Thank you, Isa.